2nd is my 2002 was my sober date last year. I stepped in. I remember the Sunday. I got picked up on January 1st by my old sponsor from 4 years previous. Actually, it was his wife that came and picked me up, and I had just chugged my last beer at the place that I was staying at. Pretty much, I was couch surfing. I was on my last couch, and I had literally nowhere to go, and so I think I got paid $450 the day before, and I know I'm going into rehab in 4 or 5 days or something like that. So what do all of us do? We need that one last hurrah. You know what I mean? So $450. My sponsor, who's taking me into his house for several days while I'm waiting for a place in the program, says save $300. I'm like, sure, okay, I'll do that. But I think I spent $300 on my DOC. The next day, I spent more money on my DOC, and cleaning up from the couch surf, I'm finding bottle after bottle after bottle, and I'm waiting till I'm alone in the room so I can pack all these empty bottles into a bag, but the bag is like clanking around. And first of all, I think that nobody knows, like that I'm as bad as I am, because I'm the best liar in the world. Everybody knew. Anyway, as I'm leaving, as I'm going out to the van to get picked up, all the bottles fall out of my bag, and they're just like, "Oh my gosh, man!" I was like, "Well, I'm going to rehab. You know what I'm going to do here." Anyway, the question is, how did I get there? I want to talk about the lie that I lived by, the lie that I believed in, based on the messages that I received as I was growing up. The lie that says you're not good enough, that I'm not good enough, that I'm not likable, that I'm not lovable as I am. That lie that says, Ian, you are destined to be alone in this world as you are. And I start to buy into that. And each time I get rejected, each time I get left out of something, that lie gets a little more life. So I start to compensate. I start to tell my own lies, build myself up a little better, because I don't want people to react to me and reject me. So I remember my papa, my mother's father, won a second place in a 10-kilometer orientation race in Toronto, Nova Scotia. I'm going through his old boxes and stuff like that, and there's this big shiny medal, and he says, "You can have that." I'm like, "Okay, thanks, cool." So I wear it to school the next day. I'm in grade 2. Vice principal comes up to me and he says, "That's a nice medal. Did you win that?" Without a second of hesitation, "Yes, I did." Thank you. And I think that's where it's going to end. It still gave me a pretty good feeling. I was like, "Hey, I'm getting a little attention here. This is nice." And what happens? First class in the morning, over the PA system, it says, "Ian Robertson has won an adult 10-kilometer orientation race and has the medal to prove it." And everybody claps, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is great. That's all I have to do is lie?" So anyway, I go home for lunch, and I see my mother. I got this big smile on my face, and she's like, "What are you smiling about?" First of all, why did she ask me? I could smile. I can be happy. Anyway, so I tell her, and she says, "Oh, buddy." And I'm like, "Oh no, here it comes." I thought she was just going to reprimand me, and that's it, and I could still, like, carry this on a little bit. She's like, "You know what you have to do?" I was like, "Not anything." Anyway, so she walks me back to school. I'm like crying the entire way. And my biggest fear is that when I tell the vice principal, he's going to say over the PA system, "Ian Robertson is the biggest liar in the school." Of course, that didn't happen. But anyway, so that's just an example of one little extreme when I was like 6. And that keeps on getting more and more. And then comes that's just a small example. There's many big ones, but I don't have time to get into all of them. So as these lies grow, the guilt grows, the shame grows. 5 minutes already? Good gosh. Okay. Let's skip forward a few years. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. I didn't really feel like I belonged anywhere. And I needed that sense of belonging. I needed that ease and comfort. And I found that in medication. I was prescribed Ritalin because I was ADHD. And I saw this magazine article. Actually, my brother saw this magazine article that said that Ritalin was called old man's cocaine. I'd never done a drug in my life. But I remember previous to that, I remember thinking about and daydreaming about having a place of my own where I could drink, put my feet up, and smoke cigarettes. I had not touched a sip of liquor before, never touched a cigarette. And this was my goal. A little bit of a warning side. Guess I didn't see it. Anyway, so I started snorting my pills, my Ritalin. And that led to my first rehab at 17 that my parents sent me to, which was for teens. Honestly, I didn't take it very seriously, and I think I learned more about drugs there than I did before I went there. Anyway, life goes on. I get out of the rehab a little early because I didn't want to finish it. I'm going to speed ahead a little bit more. 18, I start drinking a little more heavy. And I meet this girl, and we start having sex. And about a month into it, her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, comes to the door and says he was diagnosed HIV positive. And she tells me this. She's got to get tested. I don't want to know. I don't. I'm so scared, extremely fearful. And I break up with her. I kick her out of the apartment. If I saw her, I ran. I didn't walk, I ran the other way. And this fear started building up inside of me. And it got worse and it got worse. So my use, my drug use, my alcohol use got worse and worse and worse. I remember seeing a red mark on my hand, and I covered it with a band saying that I had nerve damage for like 2 years. I remember seeing a red mark down here, and I showered like this for like 2 years based on fear. I didn't even know if I had this thing, but I was pretty convinced that I was. I was so anxious I couldn't eat. I was trying to force feed myself like whatever I could. And I thought it was this disease that was tearing me down, and literally it's the anxiety. I didn't get tested for 7 years. And that little monkey on my back turned into this huge, dirty ape. And I started using heavier and heavier drugs. I ended up in the hospital at about 115 pounds 7 years later. And I remember being in the bed, and I just remember saying, I'm in God's hands. I'm in God's hands. And I would feel a little more comfortable. And that comfort grew a little bit more. And I got the first taste of a little bit of a relationship with God as he was bringing these feelings of peace. But I was still scared. I got it about a week later, went into the psych ward, and I finally told someone that I thought I might have this disease. And about a month later, I got the courage to be tested. And I went and got tested. I remember praying to God. I just started reading this book, The Purpose-Driven Life, that I found. And just changed everything, my whole perspective. I was 25 years old and thought I had just found truth. Anyway, I fast forward, I get tested. I pray to God. I say, God, I can't take this. I cannot handle the 2 weeks that it takes to get a test results back. And I just fell asleep. The next day, the test results came in, and it was negative. I spent 7 years running from something that wasn't even real, building up this strongest of addictions in which I couldn't step away from. And I got what I needed from God in that moment. And my relationship with God started to trickle away. And I thought I had made it on the other side. My time's up. So I But what I didn't realize is that this entire time that I was, supposed to be in school, supposed to be getting an education, finding out my path, 25 years old, I spent building up a drug addiction. So it started to take me down more and more and more. I got married years later. I had gone back and forth, little sobriety here and there. And until my wife, I remember giving me an ultimatum. She said, you can either keep on this path or we can get separated. We had a newborn baby. We had a 1-year-old baby, and I was no help. I had emotionally abandoned them a long time ago. And all I could think about when she said the word separation was that I wanted to go back out and use my drugs. Is this conversation over? Anyway, it went down deep, 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 deep until I had pretty much lost every single earthly possession, every single relationship that I ever had. My parents had me on block. I hadn't talked to my sister in 4 years. I had no friendships to talk about, and I was on my last couch. And I remember coming to, not this church, but it was on Sunnyside, the day after I got picked up, and they're in worship. And I remember just bawling, and I felt that connection again. I felt that connection to God, and I just thanked him, and I said, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I think I cried through that entire service, and I think Vicky has mentioned it before. She's like, yeah, you bawled the entire time. So I entered this program, and I'm sorry I'm out of time, but I entered this program called Jericho, which gave me the structure I needed, which put me into Scripture, which let me get to know this person named Jesus, that led me to God, that led me into this relationship that gave me beyond the ease and comfort I felt in drugs. And it wasn't just a temporary thing that I kept on going back for because it didn't give me what I needed. God gives me what I need. And I come into this relationship and I start feeling fulfilled. I've done 8 different rehabs before, and I always felt like I was missing something. This time's different, and it's because I have that connection. Is it perfect? No. Do I have a long way to go? Yes. But I don't think I feel like I'm missing anything anymore. I have this deep fulfillment, and that's because of my relationship with God. That's because of my relationship with Christ. The lie tells me I'm not good enough. The truth tells me I am not defined by my scars. I am defined by his. Thank you.